Welcome, Luz. You're right up there on the bat. Hitting right away. On base. Dum bum bum biddy dum. Ti da da ya bum bum. Oy ya da yoy. All right. Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. There we go. All right. Welcome, as we do every day. It's great to welcome you all. Michael in Germany. Guten Tag. Elise is with us. Boker Tov in West Virginia. John in North Carolina. Good morning. Lynn is in Long Island. Welcome. Jackie is in Charlotte, North Carolina. Boker Tov. Sandy in Michigan. Hello. Simcha. Boker Tov in Florida. Eugenia is also vacationing in Florida. Daphne in South Carolina. Wonderful Wednesdays. They are. Cindy also in Florida. May you have a speedy recovery from your surgery. Leah, likewise in Florida. We have with us Gilaroma. I think maybe I got that. Maybe not. I don't know if I pronounced it right. Good morning in Mexico. Who else is with us? We have in Clubhouse Vilma, we have Luz, we have Michael Merle, Celeste, we have Rachel. Instagrammers, we got with us Akoy in Peru, Nancy, Alice in Baltimore, Rachel is with us in South Carolina. Tanya Tov. All right. Who else is there? All right. We continue in discussion of the Nefesh Bahamis, the animal soul or / human soul, and understanding its makeup. Chapters 2, 3, 4, 5 gave us an analysis of the godly soul. Now we need analysis of the animal soul. So he explained that the garments of the soul, which garments are the expression of the individual, the expression of the soul. It's thought, speech, and action. So when it comes to the godly soul, it actually elevates us more than what the godly soul is by its own nature, through the thought, speech, and action that we engage in something of a divine origin, divine connection, a mitzvah. The garments of the animal soul, also, when we wear it, meaning we wear a thought, a words, actions that are an embodiment of klipa, it brings us down. So it's the opposite direction, zilumazeh, the opposite. It brings us down further than what we are by the nature of the animal soul itself. Meaning the animal soul itself is self-directed. It's not godly. That's why it's animal. Animal is self-directed. Or the human soul. It's self-directed. It's not God-directed. That's the nature of this world. The nature of this world is everything is klipa, covered over. We don't sense the presence of God. We feel our separateness from God. That's the nature of the animal soul. And that's the nature of the human condition. But that soul then can be expressed through a negative thought, words that should not be expressed, that are, lashon hara, for example, speaking ill of another, or doing an action that is an inappropriate action, raising your hand to another. We get vitality at that moment. That vitality is coming from sholosh klipas. To me, it's coming from a completely negative force that God has completely concealed. Today we speak about klipa, but an intermediary form of klipa. It's in between. It's not a negative action, but it's not a holy action. It's not a negative word or thought. It's not a holy word or thought. What does that mean exactly? It's sort of in between stage, as we will understand. That's called klipas noiga. Noiga means that there's some light there. It's a klipa, it's a shell, but in this klipa, this shell, this peel that's covering over on the divine inside, just like a shell covers over the fruit inside, right? That life-giving fruit. So in this klipas noiga, there's a ray of light, of goodness, of holiness, of positivity that's there. So that would be the soul, the animal soul itself, right? That would be also animals that are kosher. Animals that are kosher. Or birds, fish that are kosher. In other words, their vital force is coming from klipa, but not completely unholy, that is completely covered over, like non-kosher food that's completely, the shell is such a thick shell that there's no ray of light, of goodness there, of holiness. But in this there is. And furthermore, every thought, every utterance, every mundane activity that we do that is not negative. In other words, I give you the example, meaning a forbidden thing to do, like to have sexual thought in your mind that's an illicit thought. That's a thought that's forbidden. Or uttering negativity about, speaking ill about a loved one because you're upset at them, so you're speaking ill. That's forbidden. Lashon hara. It may be even the truth. Doesn't matter. Not allowed to do that. I mean, you can do it if it's to fix a situation, but, I'm talking about when you're speaking ill for the sake of just, that person. Well, what he did to me. She did to me. Right? Lashon hara. Anyways, whatever the parameter for that is. Or the actions, right, of raising your hand or to hit somebody that you shouldn't be doing, right? So those things are, the vitality is coming from no ray of light in that klipa. But here we're talking about that there is a ray of light in it. But yet it's not for the sake of heaven. Meaning, let's say you were eating something to, in order to give you energy so you could learn Tanya. That's eating for the sake of heaven. Right? Or doing business in order to provide for your family and educate your children and to give charity rather than self-fulfillment. Right? Those are mitzvahs that you're doing. Providing for your family, educating your family in Torah, right, with the monies that you've earned, or giving charity. All those are mitzvahs. But these are thoughts, words, and deeds that are not purposeful to a higher end. Instead, they only serve your will, your desire, and the lust of the body. Right? So this is a middle ground, because it's not for the sake of a mitzvah, but yet it's not a forbidden act or words or thought. So it's like eating because I got to nourish my body. Now, there's no fault in that. Yeah, you got to eat to nourish your body. But on the other hand, in the act of feeding yourself, there's no fault in that. But in the intent, there is a fault. Because it wasn't for the sake of heaven. You weren't eating in order that you can have strength so you can do a mitzvah. You're eating in order to nourish your body. Right? So in that, there's a spiritual intent that is lacking. So that is no different than the animal soul itself that is lacking doing something for the sake of heaven. So here also, this act of eating, let's use that as an example, right, is missing that act, the intention. The act is okay, it's kosher food. You even said a blessing. But it was not for the sake of the mindfulness or the awareness of doing this so I can have energy to do good, to serve Hashem, to study Tanya now, for example, right? So that action that is, again, kind of the middle ground, it's not holy, but it's not unholy. That is, and a lot of what we do will be that middle ground, but it's coming from not sholosh klipas atmeis, the three unholy, but it's unholy klipa that has no goodness in it, has no holiness in it, a spark of the divine that's entrapped in this shell, right, when it's done for the negative purposes. But here there's the fourth klipa, klipas noig, as we said, that has a ray of holiness in it, has that light in it. Now, that light in this physical world is minimal. That's in that klipa. Mainly negative. That klipa is mainly a negative force with a ray of holiness, of goodness there. In the higher worlds, like in the world of Yetzirah, the spiritual world of Yetzirah, there the negative force of Klipas Neiga is a half mixture of half good, half negativity. In the world of Bria, it's mostly holy and a little drop of negativity. That klipa there. But in this physical world, it's mainly totally negative and evil. So meaning that most food, for example, right, is not like I nourish myself because, my body needs it. We nourish ourselves in a way that our body doesn't need, right? Beyond what we need. It becomes, well, we'll learn more about that, what it becomes. That's not right for now. That'll be actually tomorrow's class. Right? Now we're seeing the middle ground, right? And this middle ground that we're talking about, if you recall in chapter 1, it spoke about the animal soul of the Jewish people, that even benevolence that we do and acts of kindness also can come from the animal soul, because there's that ray of goodness there. So just because you're doing an act of kindness doesn't mean the motivator or the intent, which is the intention, is coming from a godly place, is for the sake of God. It could be self-directed, even though the act is a permissible act. Just like the food that we eat, that it can be kosher and be permissible, right? But it is lacking intention, right? For the sake of heaven, for the sake of serving God, meaning. So this, therefore, even compassion, benevolence that the animal soul has is the ray of holiness and goodness that's in the Klipas Noiga that animates the animal soul that we're talking about, right? That again, what does this mean? It means that Klipas Noiga is a mixture of good and bad. In this world, it's mainly bad and some good. Now, in spiritual worlds, there it animates also created beings. There it's more good and less bad as we progress upwards. Now, the uniqueness of this middle ground, not holy for the sake of heaven, and not a prohibition, something that is something we're not allowed to do. This middle ground can go either up or down. Why? Because it's got the good and the bad in there. Right? So sometimes it will be absorbed, this middle ground of Klipas Noiga, into 3 completely unclean Klipas. Other times it's going to be absorbed and elevated into the level of sanctity, meaning that we're taking from this Klipa and we're able to elevate it. So the Alter Rebbe gives an example from the Talmud. For instance, if a person eats fat beef and drinks spiced wine, but not for the physical desire, right? Doesn't mean that you don't enjoy it, but the sake of it, your intent is not for this physical desire, but to broaden your mind to serve God and His Torah. Rava in the Talmud, one of the sages in the Talmud, said, wine and fragrance make the mind more receptive. So if you are having this to make your mind more receptive to Torah wisdom, so now you're taking food, kosher food, of course, for the Jew, right? It needs to be kosher. And you are taking that which is being animated by the middle ground, klipas noiga, right? It's being animated, it's kosher, so that means it could have its degradation, being degraded and absorbed into complete negativity, or it can be upgraded. So here, with the proper intent, it's being upgraded. Or when you eat food on Shabbos to fulfill the mitzvah of having pleasure on Shabbos from festivals. There's a mitzvah, right? What are you doing through this? You're extracting the spark of holiness, of goodness that's there in the klipa, in this shell that has that ray of holiness there, and you're extracting it and elevating it. You're elevating it till it's absorbed into divine sanctity. Now, even when it comes to speech, also, I would tell a joke. Right? Most people tell a joke, to make them look good. Sometimes to put down another person, you tell a joke. Right? That's already forbidden, to put down somebody. But what if you're telling a joke because you've got a bunch of students in front of you, and you're making a humorous remark, right? And the reason why you're doing it is to get their attention, to kind of bring them up, draw them in, right? You make that humorous remark because that way you draw them in, so that way they're more receptive to the teachings thereafter. So the reason you did the humorous remark was not to look like a genius, look at my jokes, or to put someone down, right, which is completely negative, but it's actually to elevate the students. Then that joke, that humorous remark, is sanctified, is elevated. Those words that are a klipas neiga, because again, if it was humorous, put down, so then that's sholish klipas tmeis. That's forbidden. It's a humorous remark, So now, because the intent in those words are to have a positive effect on the students, so you can get their attention, put them in a good space, so now they'll be receptive to the Torah teachings. Now you've taken those words, our vitality of klipas neiga, and you've elevated to sanctity. And its vitality is a sanctified one. Wow, powerful. So this is the middle ground. And this is most of our day, hopefully. Hopefully we're not swearing during the day. We're not telling off people. We're not speaking in negative ways, or putting down others. But we are, regular talk. Klipas neiga. But when you can take that regular talk and it was with an intent to be elevated, right? That its intent is in the service of God. The intent is for something uplifting that brings us closer to Hashem, right? Then that conversation becomes now a sanctified one. So there's many things that we take from this. So sometimes, you meet an individual, who's not close to Torah mitzvahs, not close to learning Tanya, and they're in a different world, politics, sports, this, that. And you have a conversation about politics, maybe even sports. But your intent is not the pleasure of that, but to connect with that person. So that, connect with that person. So that way, they'll be more receptive to maybe, a Jewish teachings. So that conversation becomes uplifted as a result to sanctity. All right. A lot more to bring on this. A very powerful idea. Any questions? Any comments? Rachel, on Instagram, could the concept of concealed light spark and the revealed light spark be applied to Klipas Noiga? Well, we're talking about something that's the middle ground that could either go up or down. That's Klipas Noiga. When you say a prayer to God, when you give charity, right? When you put on your tefillin, when you're observing the Shabbos, the vitality in those actions are a godly one. You know, with the mind, with the intent, right? That you're doing a mitzvah. So it's godly. That's where you're getting your vitality from. From God's holiness, from his inward desire and will and wisdom direct. As a mother gives food, that's really love to her children. Face to face, eye to eye. But now we're talking about something like this is the middle ground. Kosher food itself. You know, you could pick out, or you could use it with a blessing and an intent that it gives you energy so you could do more good, serve Hashem, and change the world for good. Right? That's different. That's taking something that's an admixture of good and evil in it and elevating it. So that's what we're talking. So if that's what you mean, Rachel, so then yes, I'm not clear from the way you wrote it if that's what you meant. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Luz. Luz, please share with us.
Good morning, Rabbi. Good morning,
everyone.
Good
morning.
Okay, so sometimes out of the blue, okay, I get a thought that is not a nice thought. It would be a thought like somebody thinks negatively, somebody, a specific person, let's say ex-person, is thinking negatively of me or has said something about me or some terrible accident is going to happen to somebody that I know. And I'm going like, where did this come from? How did this happen? I was happy. Can you tell me where those thoughts come from, Rabbi?
Yes, that will be, and we'll deal with that more specifically in chapter 27. But briefly now, well, you know what? I want you to answer. You answer me. Where's that? Is that coming from your godly soul?
Definitely not.
Okay, so it's coming from your animal soul, right?
Yeah.
It's coming from your. So if it's coming from your animal soul, meaning, you know, it's coming from a negative place. So you know that it's not something that you should entertain.
No, I definitely don't.
Okay, good. Okay, so what's important here, and that's why the Alter Rebbe is going through such a lengthy description of the animal soul, so we understand what it is from the animal soul that's coming, what kind of klipa it is, so that way we know what we can do with it. If it's a negative thought, so that means it's a forbidden thought. A negative thought is a forbidden thought, so we know that means it has to be pushed away. If it's again, in chapter 27, we're going to go into greater detail into this, but if it's a mid-ground level, like klipas noiga, that has a mixture of good and bad, that thought. So then we have to take the good from it and elevate it. But when it's a negative thought that is not something we should be having, so once we're aware of it, so we gotta get rid of it and replace it with something positive and good.
Okay, so I always say something like "bli ayin hara," something like that. Like shoot, shoot that thought away.
Yeah, exactly. That's the healthy thing is, say, you know what? I don't want to entertain this negative thought. It's not me. It's not who I aspire to be. So I'm not going to think this negative thought. Right? I want to see the good. I want to see the good and the beauty, and not the negativity.
So are you going to tell us later on a little bit more depth? Why did these thoughts come?
Oh, well, actually, we kind of explained it in chapter 6. We kind of explained it in saying that the nature of the world is klipas noiga. And this world, klipas noiga, right? Again, klipas noiga is the shell, but it's an admixture of good and bad. And the ray of light that's good, that's holy, is minimal in this world. And that's why the evil and wicked people prevail in their wickedness in this world. You would think in God's world, you do something wicked, you're going to get a slap on the hand from heaven. You don't. Because aside from the fact that, keeping the equilibrium of freedom of choice, but more specifically, it's because the nature of this world is its vitality from God is from klipas noiga. So it is, mainly negative, and therefore the evildoers, seem to, be living it up on some level, right? On some level they are, but in the end they're not, and even not in the end. But that's a different story. The point that I want to bring out over here is the nature, the way God created this world, of the tzimtzum, the contraction of His divine light. That God's presence isn't emphatic. It isn't real for us. It is something that we need to find those sparks in the klipas noiga and elevate it. And that's a job, not an easy job, because it's much easier to be naturally attracted to the negativity than the holiness and the goodness that's there. So that's so that's why it's going to come to you, the negative thought, because that's the nature of the world, is the negativity, and therefore we have to fight that and overcome that. Okay.
That's amazing. That's brilliant. Thank you. I had not connected the dots.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome. Amazing, Liz. You're great. You're wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Amazing. Yeah. And that's why, by the way, I taught this last year and the year before. And I've learned it for many years. But you know what? The nature of this world is klipa. And for us to overcome that, we need constant learning and reminders of the nature of this world, and therefore that there is a spark of holiness in the things that are permissible that I can engage in, and I can deal with it in a manner that will be, as we just said, even a humorous remark, a joke, if it's the intent to bring someone closer, then that's going to be elevated, right? If it's without purpose, just to tell the joke for the sake of a laugh, right? That you can have a laugh. So then, if it's not a forbidden joke, right? A sexist joke, a foul joke, a joke that's putting down somebody, right? But it's not uplifting, we're not putting down, then it's klipas noiga. Okay. Beautiful. All right, Rachel, thank you all for yours. Okay. Anybody else to join us? Okay, folks. As always, amazing you are. Good. All right. All right, folks. Rambam is coming up. By the way, there's TRC tomorrow at 4:30. Okay. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zurich and Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have an amazing day.